Hello, everyone. How are you? Welcome to episode 30. Can you believe we've done 30? As we see here, the crystal ball tells all, and welcome to me here with a bunch of Dollar Tree stuff that says things about crystal balls. And there you go. So, I wanted to take a second to kind of regroup. I had to go through everything, and what I did is I condensed everything so that I am right up to speed to what is being reviewed and at task currently for the upcoming hearing. I do not think that I'm going to be able to attend the hearing. I have another important appointment that I'm trying to change. I don't think a lot will be coming out of it, as nothing really ever does, because it is do nothing Wright County, but who knows? I wanted to take a moment to really say that there's a difference between civil court and criminal court. And I wonder if some people have that mixed up. This is very much a civil proceeding. So any talk about Katie Joy going into a prison cell, being sent to drug and diversion treatment, alcohol treatment, CPS involvement, etc., none of that is going to happen from what is going on here with a civil trial between 7M and Katie Joy. Nothing could be further from the truth. And it's confusing. People who haven't studied the law don't know that there's criminal and civil law. I don't know that I knew that before my undergraduate, but very different. My civil law courses were civil law, and my criminal criminal law classes were very different than civil. They are as different as can be. The main difference goes into the punishment, where civil is money, possessions, that if you are asset proofed, if you have nothing, no one's going to sue you because you have nothing. The goal is to get what you have gained by your bad behavior. If it wasn't assumed that Katie Joy has assets, these things would not be continuing in the way that they are. I am speculating. So this is a civil trial in civil court. And no, I am not an attorney. I had to drop out of my law program because I had sepsis and it nearly killed me. I had 3 weeks to live, and so I lived, but I didn't ever have the physical strength to finish law school. So I am not an attorney at all. I do not pose to be one. I can just tell you what I know from my education and life experience in that realm, that civil court is different than criminal court. The other thing that is coming up over and over that is very, very frustrating is that there seems to be some talk that some judge has ruled that Katie Joy is a journalist and that it is that simple. And if she's ruled a journalist, then boom, there's nothing that's going to happen, that she's in the clear. That's not true. Even if she somehow was ruled a judge somewhere, see, even that just fell over at the whole thought of her being a journalist. Even if somebody, and I don't know where, I don't know if in the phone hearing, because I don't have a transcript of what happened in that phone hearing. So is Katie Joy putting a narrative out there that something happened in the phone hearing that we didn't have access to, that said, oh, she's constituted as a journalist? If you are qualified as a journalist and then have journalistic privilege, that does not negate your terrible behavior. The whole lawsuit is not based on whether or not she's a journalist. It's that may be one afternoon in a trial setting as to whether or not she's a journalist, and then that means that she doesn't have to give up her sources, I suppose, but that there is no journalist that would act like this. And it's the trial is not based on, or the upcoming trial, the action, the civil suit is not based upon whether or not she's a journalist. It is that her behavior has cost others immeasurable amounts of dollars, but more specifically $40 million in loss and projected 20-year loss. The considerations here are, in the state of Minnesota, county of Wright, in this case type civil, we are looking at Katie Joy being sued in the correct jurisdiction, which was important. Each previous action has dovetailed into where we are now. And so we have the jurisdiction, and we have over here that they know that Katie Joy goes by several of these different channels. And I think that this is just a fraction of the channels that she goes by, but these are the ones that are stated. And we go in here, so it lays out the facts, and then we come over here and it says that, defendant Katie Joy has a history of intentionally, maliciously, and or recklessly publishing false and or misleading information about various people and entities, including plaintiffs, their clients, and associates, and that Katie Joy holds herself out as an established YouTube personality and self-proclaimed internet troll with a professed obsession with plaintiffs. And that she will not stop going after plaintiffs until nobody works with them. That she has a platform of hundreds of thousands of people. All of these things are considered. Whether or not she's a journalist doesn't matter. We have in here that defendant Katie Joy intentionally engages in internet trolling under both her new name and various pseudonyms for the purpose of harassment and causing others consternation, grief, emotional distress, financial ruin, and to otherwise cause damage to their reputations, well-beings, and livelihoods. That we have social media posts that disparage the plaintiffs. Okay, so even if she was ruled a journalist, she doesn't have the right to disparage others. A true journalist tells a story through the subject's words. They don't interject themselves as she does. She is on a campaign to hurt people, and that's not acceptable. This whole chart in here has the dates and the corresponding well, they were hyperlinks, but now that they may or may not be there, these are just the proof of where they once were. And so we have this whole chart that's put forth page after page of the things that she said. And one of the things here is it says that Catherine Polson has accessed and distributed to the public confidential court documents covered by protective order, which is really interesting because we know that she sure doesn't like anything being brought up about what she thinks is under a protective order. And that this whole chart is things that, whether or not she's a journalist or just an internet troll and a person who's made a whole fortune on toxicity and hate for her jealousy towards other women who are actively engaged in their marriages and children. And she has continued disparagement is another accusation. Whether or not she's a journalist, she doesn't have the right to do this. This is a whole chart of what she's accused of saying, that whether or not she's a journalist, she did this. She's accused of doing these things, that even if she's ruled a journalist, she's accused of all of this continued disparagement. She's accused of defamation. Count one, defamation. Okay. And that it has in here that Katie Joy communicated all of the posts outlined in the chart in this complaint, in addition to other statements on various platforms, to hundreds of thousands of people through her various social media accounts. And the false statements are categorically false. What kind of a journalist posts things that they know are categorically false? What kind of a journalist boasts about being a troll? Trolling is not a virtue. The false statements have caused and continue to cause plaintiffs significant reputational harm, mental distress, humiliation, hatred, contempt, and embarrassment. As a direct proximate result of the conduct of defendants' false statements, plaintiffs have been shunned, avoided, and injured in their occupation or business. Okay. And then we have over here count 2, where we have defamation per se. And so even if she's a journalist, she's accused of posting false statements, accused of defamation, accused of defamation per se, in that she contacted individuals and organizations directly to disparage the plaintiffs, that she knew the false statements were false when she made them, and at the very least acted with reckless disregard for the truth. What kind of a journalist acts with reckless disregard for the truth? That she made the false statements with actual malice. No journalist would go through and continue to make false postings with malice, with the intention of ruining another's reputation, because journalists earn their money by being the cream of the crop with credibility, by earning their place, by telling somebody else's story in a way that lets the story speak for the subject matter, the person. They don't interject themselves into the story. And so if she's a journalist, it doesn't excuse defamation per se, disparagement. And then we get into tortious interference of contract. And we have in here that defendants have and continue to use social media to direct their followers on social media to convince third parties who have contracts with plaintiffs to cancel those contracts. The defendants have and continue to use social media to direct their followers on social media to convince third parties not to enter in contracts with the plaintiffs. That tortious interference of contract is nothing that a journalist would engage in, because they would fear their own reputation and credibility being harmed. And then she's charged with count 4 for commercial defamation, that defendants have made numerous disparaging statements about plaintiffs' credibility, businesses, and service, that these statements made by defendants would clearly be understood by third parties to disparage plaintiffs' credibility and their services in the marketplace. That hundreds, if not thousands, of posts, including original posts and comments on social media, have been made disparaging plaintiffs and their business as a direct and proximate result of defendants' false statements. And they knowingly made the false statements and continue to make the false statements, which are misleading, unprivileged statements of facts, and intended such statements to injure plaintiffs' financial interest with respect to their trade, profession, and business. No journalist would do that. A journalist is concerned about their reputation and about the truth and the facts as a paramount importance to their very existence in their trade, in their craft. And no journalist would go and continue to spread such toxic venom and vitriol just because they want other people to possibly be as negative as they must feel, because as they say, misery loves company. As we see here in the post where she wrote that she contacted her colleagues at the LA Clippers to share information about this discovery and asked them to look into it further and possibly separate with the Crump team, including all of the guys led by Daniel, where I'm told they always let themselves and for the most part disassociated with others while in the arena. Good news, they were canceled for the performance they were supposed to do that same night, as well as indefinitely, and the Clips agreed to launch an investigation into this group further in the meantime. Small victories. And she writes, multiple talent agents and managers have told me that the Clippers are cutting ties with 7M. And she writes out of here of her own LLC without a crystal ball. She says, I have spoken to multiple talent agents and managers along with industry insiders who have applied pressure to the Clippers management to cut ties with 7M. Last week, an insider told me that the Clippers abruptly canceled Crucified's show for the week. The same thing happened this week. We are hearing extremely concerning information coming out about Robert Israel Shin. We have heard that he and his team have been planning to build a sanctuary for artists to live, work, and pay them for everything. Okay, and she's got 1,134 likes. This is not what a journalist would do. Okay, posting this and boasting that she's made this happen. And why? She doesn't have a personal relationship with these people. Miranda Derrick has probably worked since she was a toddler, dancing and going without and sacrificing this dessert and that dessert to work and work her craft and make her body a instrument of precision to be able to go out and earn great money for her art and her sacrifice, and then to have it taken away because some little shrew sitting in their house is unhappy with God because of the way that their life turned out. So she wants to take what others have away and laugh about it and brag about it and affect events. How powerful did that make her feel? She must feel so out of control and lonely that that's how she was happy, because she was very happy in this post. You can feel the giddiness. You can just see this. Multiple talent agents and managers have told me that the Clippers are cutting ties with 7M. Why? Why is she doing this? She has no relationship with them. She didn't work for Robert Shin. She continues to attach herself to others who are high profile to get herself a bigger platform. And people pay into it. She has made a legacy of hate, and now this hateful legacy follows her because they're all opportunistic. They all have to have a source, a life source to grab onto, like a cockroach. A cockroach needs a host. It needs something to eat upon. So Katie Joy goes and gets the scraps of everybody else and goes into the hate and goes into the people's biggest fears and goes and sits there and has a parasitical relationship with others who are successful, with other moms who are engaged with their children and have fun with their children and make a happy, welcome home. Or I've never seen a woman hate other women in particular like this. But now what's happening is then the other parasites are all swarming off of her toxicity and getting the scraps. And so other women are fighting with other women, and it's just a big narcissistic mess. All started by Katie Joy. All started by Katie Joy. Who would follow her? Who would support her? Who would deem that she's a journalist, and who would believe anything that she says, because she's made a lot of money off of her lies. Now, we have the intentional infliction of emotional distress. No journalist would be accused of intentional infliction of emotional distress. We see that she seems to gain happiness by the misery of others. A journalist, a responsible journalist, would not have all of these allegations and accusations put forth to them over and again. One time, if maybe somebody really had a bad feeling about what she did, maybe, but most journalists go their whole entire career without being accused of one of these counts. These are accusations. I understand that. But let's go through here and make sure that we understand what's at stake. That it's not a trial, an upcoming trial about whether or not Katie Joy is a journalist. And if she's a journalist, then boom, she wins, game over. No, there are all of these outstanding issues regarding her behavior that need to be addressed in a civil court. And if it goes to trial, if they cannot find a conclusion where both sides are happy, where Katie Joy will stop posting and make her victims whole, then it will go to trial. And even if she doesn't have to give up her sources, because maybe there are no sources. Maybe that's the truth. Maybe there are no sources. That even if there are sources or there aren't sources does not excuse the behavior. And these are the considerations. It is not just about if she is a journalist or not. A journalist does not have the right or the license to just go and destroy other people's lives and engage in this kind of dysfunctional, hateful behavior. The conduct of defendants was intended to cause plaintiffs severe emotional distress and was perpetrated with reckless disregard as to the probability that plaintiffs would suffer severe emotional distress as a result. The plaintiffs and members of 7M and their associates have received threats since defendants began posting the false statements. The plaintiffs and members of 7M and their associates have been stalked since defendants began posting the false statements. What kind of a journalist would allow this kind of dysfunction from their words? Wouldn't a journalist be concerned that maybe there was something that was misunderstood or untrue? And wouldn't a true journalist work to make it right? To correct the behavior that caused pain in others? The extreme and outrageous conduct of defendants included but was not limited to a series of harassment where defendants published to various public mediums false statements about plaintiffs, including that they are a cult, that they are engaging in sex trafficking, that they are engaging in mind control, that they do not pay their clients pursuant to their contracts, that they force their clients to live in hustle houses, among various other statements as outlined in the false statements. Defendants made and continue to make these statements knowing they were false and or with reckless disregard for their falsity. What journalist do you know or have ever heard of that is accused of egregious behavior like this? Now, she's accused of negligence. Whether or not she's a journalist or not, whether or not Cervantes is from 1972 is the statute in which we are going to determine whether or not her behavior is acceptable in protecting her sources, whether or not any of this is true. She's accused of negligence because she knew of the false and defamatory character of the false statements, that she made false statements both orally and in writing. What kind of a journalist would do that? What kind of a journalist is accused of negligence on top of intentional infliction of emotional distress and disparagement and defamation and commercial defamation and tortious interference of contract? I don't know of any. And if they were, wouldn't they be concerned to make everything right with their reputation and that of others, and to go back and see if they needed to do a course correction and understand what the confusion was about? Because then she's further accused of deceptive trade practices in that she has disparaged the goods, services, or business of plaintiffs by false or misleading representation of fact. The defendant's disparagement of the goods, services, or business of plaintiffs was done in the course of defendant's business, vocation, or occupation. That she's further accused of intentional interference with prospective advantage, in that plaintiffs had a reasonable expectation of economic advantage from prospective customers, clients, and business learning of plaintiffs' business online and hiring them or their clients due to online information or their reputation. What kind of a journalist would go and be so hateful and just go after people so that they're accused of intentional interference with prospective advantage and deceptive trade practice? It just does not make sense. That all of this hinges on whether or not she's a journalist? No, it doesn't. That has nothing to do with anything. That if indeed she's given some badge by some judge somewhere that says, okay, you're a journalist, what does that have to do with any of this? The point is moot. It's not even logical at this point that anybody would think that that is what is hanging this up. So what if she's considered a journalist? I'm not seeing why there's such a focus on that. It doesn't matter. It is, so even if she's stamped with something that says, okay, you're a journalist, then you don't have to give up your sources somehow. Okay. Well, she still is the one who did all of these things, all in this chart with the URLs that her attorney can't figure out how to access. That there's no journalist that would be this reckless. And whether or not she's a journalist, she is responsible for the behavior that has caused damage to victims. And that is what is at stake here, not whether or not she's a journalist. Now, when the initial complaint came through, they were saying that there was damages up to $1 million. And they offered to settle with her for a cool $1 million. As we saw, that she didn't. And so then 7M Films, James and Miranda Derrick, were then able to prove their losses due to defendants' false statements and their losses that occurred as such. And then the contracts that were lost were able to be put together in a projected future losses to come to a total of nearly $40 million, $39,665,269, in fact. You think that it depends on if she's a journalist or not, that then this just all just goes out and everybody just says, oh, okay, she's a journalist. She doesn't need to say anything else. And everybody just walks away. This is just craziness. And I don't know why. I think that she is running a narrative and somebody is going into her little trap and believing it and bringing it back as, oh, because this is what it's all about. And this depends on it. It has nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. I like I say, I can't figure it out from there. Now what I did is, like I said, I organized everything again, and I only threw away duplicates, because what happens when a new filing comes in, a lot of duplicates are also filed because they want what they are referring to be readily accessible to each side and the judge. So I threw away duplicates, but I still filled 2 of these 3-inch Betty binders with content that we've already reviewed for the Katie Joy. And what I learned from what happened with Plunder is, okay, it's no secret that any of us can lose our channels at any moment, that the terms of service for YouTube are very, very vague, and the house never loses. That if they for any reason decide that they don't want your channel being their liability for any reason, you're done, and you can try and fight it and they're going to ignore your appeal. Okay, so what I learned from that, because essentially they tried to come up with saying that they want to make sure that people are not just repeating other people's content or just essentially playing the news. So because Plunder was putting out probably the most popular information that was repeated, they went for her channel, and she stays anonymous. So they essentially said that, she isn't real or whatever. So in order for Plunder to get her channel back, she had to show how she came up with her information, where she got her information from, and how it allowed her to create the stories that she covered and the information that she provided. So what I learned from that is to never throw anything away. So I put it all in binder form for everything that I've done on my channel. I have everything all documented as to what day I did what, any problems with it or anything like that, any of my notes from my lives, etc., etc. I keep every single scrap of paper, and I will take a picture and show you how much I have for 1 year's work of creating content, because I need to be able to show that, because that really does seem to be the recurring thing, is that YouTube wants to see that there are creators creating the content, not just regurgitating what other people are doing. So although I broke this down here, I want you to know that it's not that, I don't appreciate that I need to keep everything, because my channel can be challenged, or I can get sued, as we all know. That's the rumor on the street. I'm gonna get sued. And if so, I would have to show how and why I came to these decisions. Of course, I have sources. Of course, I know people that know her. And that's why I've had to be very, very careful in rewording certain things and saying things in my own language and staying away from certain things that I might say too much of, because I have to be able to show where I came up with this, so that if I was put in this position, it wouldn't be that, oh, I'm a journalist. And even if I was a journalist, and let's say that I said something that was concerning, because maybe it could lead to criminal charges, then I would say, you know what, Judge, I was told this, and I was told by this person, and so can I talk to you in closed chambers to protect this person's identity, because they don't want to have the repercussions of coming forward. So something like that. That's how it would be done. That then I would be able to tell the judge behind closed, behind, his chambers that, hey, this is why I said this, and this is that. And then if that was something that would lead to a civil action or a criminal complaint, then the judge would say, okay, well, you are withholding knowledge of a complaint, of a criminal complaint or whatever. We need to have a sheriff come over here and take a report or whatever. That's the way that it is. It's not just that, oh, okay, so no one can ever ask you anything about how you came about this. It's just craziness. And so for the purposes of YouTube, they want to see that you have foundation in your creation. And for the purposes of a journalist, you want to have foundation in your knowledge. So I quite frankly don't understand how she still has a channel. People say, oh, she's really good about not breaking terms of service. She does break terms of service. Every time that she doxes somebody, that's a violation of terms of service. Where she can get in trouble is because she doesn't say alleged. And that would be important. A true journalist would say alleged, or certain actions have led to this conclusion. Something like that I could see, but we all know that she's just pulling sources out of her ass. She doesn't have actual sources. She's making it up and people believe what she says. And other channels that are in litigation, like Armchair Detective, the Ruby Frank, how many channels, once they are in a litigation setting, YouTube seems to want to take down the channel because they don't want to be named as a secondary or tertiary litigant. I don't know how she still has her channel to this point. But wonders never cease. And to get to where we are, I updated the register of actions to be sure that everything was still there and everything is correct. And we are still at the 29 pages of actions. Very full 29 pages. And we are over here, because if we go over here, what I see is that between (10:06) and 11:15, nothing happened. Now, I did this. I went and printed everything off. I think it was the 1st. So the filings for the 15th were not there, but it's here. And so there's just all of these things just showing there's emails. There's nothing here saying that anything has happened, that there's been any conferences, that there was any emergency hearings. There's nothing. So I don't know where any meeting would have been to... Okay, so the 10:03 was the phone conference only, held off the record. So there may not be a transcript available for that at any point. Looks like all of the fees to the court are paid up by both sides. And that's all I see there. And then we have over here where we just have the events. And so it's similar to the Register of Actions, but it's just that one page, and it just has like the notice of other, and so nothing that I can't find a corresponding document to, and there's nothing that I can see anywhere that has where she was ruled a reporter. I don't know what anybody's talking about. As I said, I saw that somebody said that she had court on October 30th, and this is where that confusion may have stemmed from, because it shows here in this order, it says that the above entitled matter came before the Honorable Carrie Willis on October 3rd, 2023 for an off-the-record phone conference based on the representations and agreements of the parties. It is hereby ordered that the matter is scheduled for a live hearing on November 15th at 10 a.m. to address any outstanding discovery disputes between the parties, and the rescheduling of dates in the scheduling order entered on July 13th, 2022. The parties shall submit written submissions by October 30th at 4:30 outlining any ongoing discovery disputes between the parties, and a letter will be acceptable. The dates provided on the scheduling order entered on July 13th, 2022 continue to be suspended by agreement of the parties. Okay. So where people thought that she had court on the 30th, that was just that the paperwork to be filed was due then. She didn't actually have court then. That is what I thought that she must have been stressed out about, because I saw this post in Reddit where somebody had taken a screenshot of her saying that there wouldn't be any posting because she had meetings or something. And so based on the timeline of the only open case, which is 7M, I thought she must have been talking about that, but I've been repeatedly told I'm wrong. I'm wrong. And I found it in Reddit, and the whole Reddit thread was saying things like, oh, it's because she can't keep her lawsuit straight, blah, 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 blah. So I had started in there and I said, oh, the only open one is for 7M, and this was due for that. So then I just, put that over to my community post in an effort to continue to explain the situation for what it really is. But it apparently was wrong, because there's something that I don't see, and I don't know what it is, but whatever, I'm wrong. So then that puts us over here to, and then the other question somebody asked me is, it says here, your failure to take okay, so this is back here in the last episode in the interrogatory. And it says here, your failure to take the required steps may lead to a loss of evidence that could result in significant consequences to you and civil or criminal sanctions. Okay, this is huge. What type of criminal sanctions could happen here in a civil case? Interesting. It's not common to see that. Are they saying that if she refuses, she can be held in contempt of court? I don't know. It's definitely interesting to see it stated like this. But it also shows that they're not playing around and that they're getting really sick of, well, Wright County do nothing. I think that if she was in a big city court, if we were in LA and this was happening, I think that this probably would have been over by now. The fact that it's allowed to continue on like this is a disservice to the victims. Now, where we left off, to be totally up to where we need to be for the hearing for outstanding documents, is right here. We've made it this far. And so we have the notice of motion and motion to compel discovery responses. And this is written by Amber. And it states, the introduction, that defendants have failed to comply with discovery pursuant to Rules 33 and 34 of the Minnesota Rules of Civil Procedure. Plaintiffs have attempted to meet and confer with defendants regarding their deficiencies in discovery. As defendants have refused to comply with discovery pursuant to Minnesota Rules of Civil Procedure 33 and 34, plaintiffs' motion to compel discovery must be granted. And then they've got the motion here and they lay it out that says the Minnesota Rules of Civil Procedure in 37.01b and 2 provides that a party seeking discovery may move for an order compelling an answer, designation, production, or inspection. That this motion may be made if a deponent fails to answer a question propounded or submitted under Rules 30 or 31. Or B, a corporation or other entity fails to make a designation under Rule 30, or if a party fails to answer an interrogatory submitted under Rule 33, or a party fails to produce documents or fails to respond, that inspection will be permitted or fails to permit inspection as requested under Rule 34. In a Rule 37 motion to compel, the non-producing party's burden to establish that the sought-after information is immune from discovery in regarding Commissioner of Public Safety in Minnesota 2007, plaintiffs are entitled to an order compelling discovery responses from defendants. Plaintiff served its first set of interrogatories and first set of requests for production of documents to defendants on May 11, 2023, collectively called the Discovery by Stavig, Exhibit A and B. Defendants served their answers to the first set of discovery on June 12, 2023 in the Stavig Affidavit 3-4 Exhibit C and D. Plaintiffs served their discovery deficiency letter upon defendants on July 7, 2023 in the Stavig Affidavit 6 Exhibit F. Counsel for plaintiffs have made a good faith effort to meet and confer with defendants to secure the requested information prior to making this motion to compel disclosures from defendants. Defendants' responses to discovery were deficient in 23 requests for production of documents and 36 interrogatories in the Stavig Affidavit Exhibit F. Defendants failed to provide even one page in response to plaintiffs' request for production of documents. The specific challenges to discovery are outlined as follows. Requests for production of documents. The request 1. Plaintiffs requested all documents which relate to any claims and defenses alleged in the litigation between the parties. Defendants objected as impermissibly vague and protected by journalists' privilege pursuant to Minnesota Statute 595 and Cervantes v. Time Incorporated. Plaintiff's request is not impermissibly vague. It is specific as to requesting documents which relate to this lawsuit and defendants' defenses in the same. Further, a journalist privilege pursuant to Minnesota Statute 595 and Cervantes v. Time Incorporated does not allow anyone, even if they are a journalist, to withhold all information in a lawsuit for defamation. Boom. Defendants have failed to move the court for a designation as a journalist prior to this response to discovery and have not moved the court for this designation pending. Okay, here we are. I guess I could have just looked ahead and read this, and then I wouldn't have had to have made my case in the previous 45 minutes of how it doesn't matter if she's a journalist or not. Anyway, as defendants have failed to protect any alleged privilege as a journalist in the past year of litigation, it is improper to use and alleged, okay, and they put and, so that it should be an instead of and. Improper to use an alleged journalistic privilege to shield them from complying with any discovery in this action. Defendants are required by law to release to plaintiffs discoverable and relevant information to this lawsuit. As to defendant specific objections under Cervantes versus Time Incorporated, defendants have provided no application of this case to the facts at hand for why journalistic privilege under Cervantes would preclude them from disclosing all information relevant to the claims and defenses alleged by defendants in this lawsuit. Further, Cervantes differs greatly from the case at hand. In Cervantes, the motion to compel was specifically brought forth to reveal the identity of the reporter's informants. In Cervantes also differs from this matter as it was undisputed that, number 1, the article concerned issues of public concern. Number 2, that the defendant was a journalist. And number 3, that plaintiff was a public figure. All 3 of these issues are in dispute in the lawsuit at hand, and discovery relevant to defendants' claims and defenses in this lawsuit is proper and must be disclosed. Similarly, defendants' claim of privilege under Minnesota Statute 595 also fails, as defendants have not specified how the statute applies with regard to either defendants or the specific discovery request. And as stated above, the parties still dispute if the defendants are a journalist. The information was that of public interest, and if some or all plaintiffs are public figures. For the foregoing reasons, defendants must disclose the requested information. Okay. Again, it's saying even if she is a journalist, that doesn't make her immune to complying with discovery. And this is relevant. So again, can we say that this was discussed in the confidential phone call off record? Can we say that, okay, for the purposes of this discussion, she's a journalist? Okay, well, so freaking what? That doesn't give her the right to act so recklessly as to continually cause harm to others. Plaintiffs requested all documents referenced in responding to interrogatories. Defendants responded that they linked digital copies in posts. Defendants are required to provide all documents referenced when preparing answers to interrogatories. If there are specific posts, messages, emails, call logs, notes, etc., which were referenced, they must be disclosed. Defendants have not relied on any case law or rule that states that they do not have to disclose documents they are referenced in preparing their responses to discovery. As defendants have merely made a declaration, they don't have to disclose documents and have not included any legal reasoning in Therefore, defendants must disclose all documents they referenced in responding to the interrogatories. Request 3. Plaintiffs requested all documents referenced in responding to requests for admission. Defendants responded that they linked digital copies in posts. Plaintiff's rationale for defendants' deficiency in disclosure as it relates to responding to the documents referenced in responding to the request for admission is the same as that of Request 2. Request 4. Plaintiffs requested defendants produce all social media posts defendants have made regarding 7M Films Incorporated or their associates. Defendants did not object to this request, but instead stated that they do not know what affiliates means and that defendants have asked plaintiffs to provide copies of plaintiffs' posts already in its possession. As to the latter, defendant's discovery request to plaintiff is not relevant to defendant's disclosures. All of plaintiff's claims in this lawsuit are based on defendant's post and associated behavior, as the entire lawsuit rests on defendant's social media posts. Defendants are required to provide the same. Despite plaintiffs sending defendants a preservation letter, defendants have deleted, archived, or taken down many of their posts regarding plaintiffs. See Stavig Affidavit Exhibit E. Defendants have further continued to post about plaintiffs and this lawsuit on their social media platforms. Plaintiffs do not have access to every post defendants have made about them, but each post defendants make regarding plaintiffs and this lawsuit are relevant to this lawsuit. As to defendants' claim that they do not know what affiliates means, the dictionary definition of affiliates is to officially attach or connect a subsidiary group or a person to an organization. As counsel for defendants has repeatedly stated, she has decades of experience in litigation, stating that they do not understand what the word affiliates means or how it is connected to 7M Films is not persuasive. Further, defendants' objection to affiliates does not preclude discovery of information as it relates directly to plaintiffs. Defendants must answer this request in full. Bam. Here's the dictionary definition of affiliate since you can't figure it out. I was on vacation, Judge. Oh my God. Request number 5. Plaintiff's request was the same as request number 4, but with regard to plaintiff Robert Shin. Defendant had the same response as request number 4. Plaintiff's rationale is the same as that of Plaintiff's rationale is the same as that of request 4. Defendants must produce copies of all social media posts they have made about Robert Shin from January 2020 to the present. Request 6. Plaintiffs requested all social media posts regarding Melanie Wilking and or her affiliates from January 2020 to the present. Defendants objected as Melanie Wilking is a non-party. Defendant's objection did not include any legal reasoning for how seeking information relating to a non-party to a lawsuit is a valid objection to discovery. Information related to non-parties is discoverable information. Defendant's post indicated that she had contact with Melanie Wilking and others associated with Ms. Wilking in relation to her posting about plaintiffs. As defendants' own statements have related Melanie Wilking to the core factual basis in this lawsuit information and communications regarding her, it is highly relevant. Defendants must respond to this request. Requests 7 and 8. Plaintiffs requested the same as in requests 4 and 5 with relation to plaintiffs Miranda Derrick and James Derrick. Defendant's response was the same. Plaintiff's rationale is the same as that of requests 4 and 5. Defendants must produce copies of all social media posts they have made about Miranda Derrick and James Derrick from January 2020 to the present. Request 9. Plaintiffs requested defendants produced all drafts of social media posts defendants have made regarding 7M films. Defendants objected on the grounds of relevance. Defendants have engaged in a campaign of false information against 7M Films Incorporated, almost exclusively consisting of posting to social media. All drafts, notes, communications, and other preparation materials are relevant to this lawsuit. Unposted or posted drafts are relevant as they may allow the court to glean information as it relates to the factual accuracy of defendants' posts as well as the intent of defendants in posting them. Further, the evidence of drafts, outlines, and other such documentation or information can be used to determine if defendants are considered journalists. As the information is relevant to this lawsuit, defendants must disclose. Boom. As I was saying, I can't throw away anything that I've used in making my content. I was afraid of that, especially when I was doing Watts content. And as I did the Watts content, in order to help I'd find out things and people would argue and argue and argue over certain things. And then I'd find the truth and the facts of where everything stemmed from. So what I did is, in order to hopefully stop myself from being sued, is I created a fictional story that may or may not have truth in it, that gave an explanation or a plausible scenario in how the situation or example at hand could have happened. That is where I protected myself and I did fair use and disclaimers and saying that, nothing here is true and don't consider it truth, that I'm making up a story, that this may or may not be true. You decide, you do your own research. And then I went down the whole rabbit hole and narrated the whole discovery. And even though I did that, there are people that just believe it's a conspiracy and a psyop and it didn't even happen. So even though you go to every great extent to find this and that, people still won't believe it. So with the Watts, it was more important to me to really go beyond the headlines and look between the black and the white and really look in the gray and make people's gray matter work. That I believe that the truth is in the gray in the Watts case. That a lot of journalists, speaking of journalists, were able to make a lot of money on a narrative of this perfect, beautiful family that just had the dad snap one day like a rabid dog. Nothing could be further from the truth. But the latter provided good content and headlines, and that makes the media machine run. And so people were making millions off of this false story. But were they out there saying that, hey, this may or may not be true? No, because they don't have a bunch of YouTube trolls coming after them. They made their money and they went. And I believe that there's a huge cautionary tale in what happened with the Watts. But I also believe that there's nothing further that I can do to be helpful in showing that in the Watts. So my Watts content is there in a playlist form. if anybody's ever interested. And a lot of you have been with me since day one with the Watts. And I thank you for being here with me to this day, because you all know that we together have a different way of seeing things, and together we can figure out a lot and provide each other with food for thought. And I love all of our conversations and the friends that I've met along the way, and you guys really keep me going no matter what. So thank you for always doing that for me. And as it was really becoming a threat of being sued by Shanann's parents for any creator who spoke differently than the way they wanted the story told, I was extra careful in keeping my notes, so that if something like this happened, I had my notes. And I had why I thought this way, how I felt this way. We all know how deep I had to go into, as I've discussed before, of Shanann referencing Baby Wise. And I had to go through this book, 5 Ways from Sideways, and show that no, in fact, what she was saying she read is contrary to what Baby Wise says. That there's nothing in either of the Baby Wise books that would have been available to her at the time that she was referencing said that. So, I keep these kind of notes. I keep other books that I reference and cite, and everything from little doodles on Post-it notes to big legal pads. You have to keep all of it. As it says here, that, if you are a journalist, you do that. It says in here that the evidence of drafts, outlines, and other such documentation or information can be used to determine if defendants are considered journalists. As the information is relevant to this lawsuit, defendants must disclose, because that's what you do as a content creator, as a journalist. You create. you create, and you put together the notes, and you say how this one connects to this, and that this made you think of this, and if this happened this way, then I wonder if this happened here, and this person said this, and this happened here, so that and that is what happened. But if you're just speaking from your ass and you're just making up a bunch of shit one day, and you think that it makes a pretty meme with some graphics and sketchy writing, then yeah, you're not going to have the notes and the marked up books and everything else that you used in preparing for that article, that story, that episode, that creation. She doesn't have it. Where's she coming up with this stuff? And if it's not true and it's just stories, then she needs to say that too. That, you know what? She's just thinking out loud. And this may not be true. Instead of acting like it's this big thing and costing people their livelihoods, their careers, they're breaking their dreams. Request number 10. Plaintiffs requested defendants produce all drafts of social media posts defendants have made regarding Robert Shin. Defendants objected on the grounds of relevance. Well, what relevance is this? Plaintiff's rationale is the same that in Request 9. Defendants must produce all drafts of social media posts she has made regarding Robert Shin. That Request 11. Plaintiffs requested all correspondence in which defendants discussed 7M Films Incorporated and its affiliates with third parties. Defendants objected as material protected by journalistic privilege pursuant to Minnesota Statute 595 and Cervantes. Plaintiffs incorporate their previous analysis of the journalistic privilege here. Defendants do not qualify as journalists and therefore not entitled to any journalistic privilege. Notwithstanding, the privilege asserted does not protect from discovery of relevant information as it relates to all third parties. Journalistic privilege is narrowly applied to sources of information to journalists, not to whom all persons whom a journalist contacts regarding an issue. See generally Cervantes versus Time Incorporated. Now, what we have here is that Amber masterfully turned the defense strategy against them. So she went in, most likely, and reviewed Cervantes versus Time Incorporated and saw what we are saying, that it doesn't matter, that you don't go to a judge and get certified as a journalist, get a special little badge that then allows you to be a destructive little twat. It doesn't happen. There's nothing that gives her a license to continue her reckless behavior. She's caused too much harm to too many people. And as long as people continue to give her a platform and give her the attention and give her the platform and go and repeat what she says, it continues. Ask yourself how you can be a solution to the problem. Ask yourself how you personally cannot support what Katie Joy is doing and how you can be a part of getting the truth and the facts out there. Because not only are all of these people hurting, but there's a little boy in her care that isn't getting the attention that I believe he deserves. Because she has, in my opinion, an online addiction. Because she gets a high off of this destruction, off of this attention that she gets. Because she didn't get enough attention as a child. She wasn't hugged enough. She gets attention this way. It goes to a little mommy. She wants the mommy love. And she's not getting it. So she gets the adulation and all the attention from doing this. Ask yourself how you can not be a part of the problem and how you can be a part of the solution so that maybe that little boy will have a higher quality of life at some point, because maybe something here will force his mother to have to change her behavior so that she can be a better and more present mother. However that happens. Her being deplatformed would be the best thing ever. Her never being able to turn on social media would be wonderful. Her taking her child and her husband on vacation and completely logging off would be wonderful. Her being forced to pay attention to her family would be wonderful. This isn't wonderful. This is toxic, and this is vitriol, and this is spew, and this is disgusting. And I just hate that so many people hurt because she hurts. Hurt people, and she hurts people, and there's hurt surrounding her. And again, it does not matter whether or not she is certified as a journalist. It does not matter at all. You don't do this kind of stuff to anybody. Request 12. Plaintiffs requested all correspondence in which defendants discussed Robert Shin and or his affiliates. Defendants had the same objection as request 11. Plaintiff rationale is the same that in request 11. Defendants are required to disclose this correspondence requested. Request 13. Plaintiffs requested all correspondence with which defendants discussed Melanie Wilking and or affiliates. Defendants had the same objection as requests 5 and 11. Plaintiff's rationale is the same that is in requests 5 and 11. Request 14. Plaintiffs requested all correspondence defendants have had with Melanie Wilking from January 2020 to the present. Defendants objected on the same journalistic basis. Plaintiff's rationale is the same as that in requests 5 and 11. Additionally, defendants have not provided a legal source which states journalistic privilege precludes disclosure of correspondence between a defendant and a named third party. Defendants must disclose all correspondence they have had with Melanie Wilking. Hello, boo-boo. Hi, baby. Come here. Come closer. Oh, you're there? Are you comfortable? Boo-boo just came up because this is Boo-boo's room. I'm in Boo's room. He has a double bed to himself, but he sleeps in our king bed. Oh, Boo-boo, you're so funny. Request 15. Plaintiffs requested all correspondence which discussed Miranda Derrick. Defendants objected on the same journalistic basis. Plaintiffs' rationale is the same as that in Request 4. Request 16. Plaintiffs requested all correspondence in which discussed James Derrick. Defendants objected on the same journalistic basis. Plaintiff's rationale is the same as that in Request 4. Request 17, plaintiffs asked for tax documents from Catherine Mansky Paulson from January 2020 to the present. Defendants objected as to relevance. Defendants have a self-proclaimed monetized social media presence. The subjects she discusses on her social media page are what brings in revenue. If defendants have sustained an increase in revenue as a result of their disparagement of plaintiffs, that monetization is relevant to defendants' motive for their continued assault on plaintiffs' character. As tax returns and other financial statements are relevant to this lawsuit, defendants must disclose the same. Request 18. Defendants asked for tax documents from Without a Crystal Ball, LLC from January 2020 to the present. Defendants objected as to relevance. Plaintiff's rationale is the same as that in Request 17. Request 19. Plaintiffs requested all contracts defendants have entered into with third parties regarding plaintiffs in the Shekinah Church. Defendants objected as irrelevant and that the contract contain confidentiality clauses. Doesn't say contains, it says contain. Defendants have failed to provide a legal basis which supports the contention that a confidentiality clause in a contract would preclude discovery in a lawsuit where there has already been a determination that parties may elect to assign confidentiality to documents disclosed. Further, in response to her interrogatories, defendants claimed that they were unaware of anyone who had made contact with regarding plaintiffs and then that they did not keep any such records. If defendants do in fact have these records, it appears that defendants have lied under oath in their discovery responses, which constitutes perjury. With regard to relevance, one of the male claims, it says male claims instead of main, one of the male claims of plaintiffs is that defendants have alleged that they and Shekinah Church are a cult engaged in heinous criminal acts. Any contracts defendants have entered into with regard to this church are extremely relevant to defendants' motive in this lawsuit, as well as the discoverability of the underlying factual basis for her statements. Defendants must respond to this discovery request. Okay, And now we are really getting into newer content, as this is repetitive, and this was a basic review to get us up to speed to where all of the discussion is right now online and otherwise, that everything hinges on whether or not she's a journalist or qualified as a journalist. That's preposterous. It makes no difference, as we've seen here. So when I continued to go through everything and try to search for where a court had ruled this somewhere, I found this here and I found this here. So these are where I have tried to see without luck. So thank you for being a part of this review to go back to where all we are, where we have been, where we're going. I am going to stop it here so that we can be fresh in the rest of the information, because the rest of the information is very, very important to what is going on right now. So with this, I am going to put this here, and we will do part 31 beginning here, and 30 ends here. Thank you for this review and update and chat. I appreciate you all. I love your undying support. It means so much to me. I am so thankful for the time that you give to me and going through this with me, so that I know that I'm not seeing something that isn't there. The questions that you ask me, whether in the comments or in your emails, are always on point and give me great feedback and food for thought. So thank you for all that you give me. I have a great group here. We have this great girl gang that doesn't need anything from anybody else and doesn't care what anybody else thinks, because we think in a certain way and we get things done. So without further ado, I want to thank you once again for listening, and thank you for your time here. And again, what difference does it make if Katie Joy is determined to be a journalist? She can't do this. So I hope that this hour and 20-minute dissertation on whether or not Katie Joy is a journalist or not, and who cares, has been great for you. Thank you so much. I will talk to you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.